TT, two-turn baby girl, you know me. And we're live. We're live. We're live. Let me turn this down. What's up, guys? Welcome to the very first Brand Talk Live. So long story short, how this content series is going to work is I'm going to have I'm going to have people submit questions. I'm going to curate questions I've sort of been collecting over the years in this line of work, and I'm going to be answering it all on sort of a live platform like this. So with that said, let's actually just dive in here, and I'm going to pull up the first question. To give you, before I dive into that first question, actually, to give you a little background on who I am, just because I know certain people that may not catch this live, but they'll catch this later on YouTube, other platforms, etc. I'm Corey Johnson. I'm a brand strategist. I help people clarify and build their brands online. The clarification part starts with clarifying your brand strategy. So like, who's your audience? What's your message going to be? How are you going to connect and reach people? Down into the brand identity side, where we're building out your brand identity in terms of your website, your logo, how you show up in the world, and then creating the strategy and the execution to actually build your audience and reach as many people with your message as you can. So that's, long story short, what I do. I work with a range of thought leaders, speakers, influencers. You can check us out at theinfluencesociety.com, or you can go over to brandedbycorey.com to learn a little bit more, or over to Instagram at at Corey B Johnson, Corey B Johnson. So let's dive in here. So the first question comes in from Sabrina, and Sabrina asks, how do I advertise and monetize my skills and expertise? Very, very good question, and definitely relevant for everything that's going on with, at the time of recording this COVID-19 pandemic situation. So in 2008, I found myself in a situation where I wanted to start building a business, and I sort of took a step back. Long story short, was just going through, I was still in high school, and I was in grade 10 at the time. And I decided I needed to start a business just to support myself, support my family in any way I could at the time. And I looked back on my skills and found that I was pretty good at Photoshop. Photoshop was probably the only skill I had at that age. I was 16 at the time. And I was like, okay, I definitely need to start a business, something on the side that I can build up while I'm going to school and working. I was working at Blue Notes retail at the time, and also a banquet hall as a server. And I said, all right, let me start a graphic design business, since I know how to use Photoshop, because I know businesses need logos, print material, marketing material, etc. So that's where I started. I started up, I call it a graphic design agency, but it was just me as a freelancer. Started building up on Fiverr.com. And over time, somehow through I don't know, the law of attraction, the universe, ended up getting connected with certain people who ended up taking me under their wing and connecting me with other people. And it just pulled me into this journey of building my business, learning about business, really adapting an entrepreneurial mindset, primarily being a creative. And that's sort of where I started. I said, all right, I got the skill of graphic design. So how do I go about building? So I remember the first thing I did throughout that process was I built a website. And I remember putting in so much work at building my website, getting my business cards. And I was like, cool, like, now what? And then having to really heavily research marketing, internet marketing, and really diving into sort of that world. And the first thing I did, so just to sort of, I want to sort of break down the steps as I tell this story. The first thing I did was I set up my, I guess, my core brand. So essentially, I set up a website that described exactly what I did, what services I offered, who they were for. And once that was set up, I had business cards, because at the time, business cards were still relevant. You still went and you networked, you exchanged cards instead of nowadays essentially your social media profile is your new business card, because when you go to networking events, you're not exchanging a card, you're exchanging a profile, which is very interesting. um so I built that up. And so that would be your first step: build out your site. If you don't, if you aren't at the stage where you're ready to build out your site, I would simply build out a PDF document that lays out exactly who you are, what you do, who you help, what specifically your services entail in terms of deliverables and how it works, and the advantages and outcomes that they'll receive from using your services. So once you've done that, from there, the next step is for you to, and part of this process, even before you move into that, is really just it actually starts with clarity. So let me take a step back, because I'm jumping the gun here. It really starts with clarifying exactly who your audience is, because if you don't know who you're going to help, it's harder to create a service that's truly going to be valuable for them. So first thing you need to do is identify exactly who you're going to help. And you want to get very specific. You want to get specific. So for example, let's say let's say I'm a business coach. There's a range of different people I can work with. I can work with a person who's trying to go from, startup to, let's say, $10,000 per month, to the person that's trying to go from that to six figures, or the person going from six figures to hitting that $1 million mark. Each person is at a different stage in their journey, in a different psychology, mindset, just in a totally different space. And it's going to require a different set of skills and a different set of steps, depending on who exactly that business coach, or we'll put myself in that place, for example, depending on who I want to work with, they're going to be at a different stage. So if I'm focusing on working with somebody at point A, that's trying to get to point B, I'm going to create a course with very specific steps, versus if I'm trying to create a course from someone that's already at point B and trying to get to point C, I'm going to have a specific set of steps for them to get from there to there. And once you can clarify exactly where your audience is, it also gives you the clarity to then, second step is your marketing, your content creation. Essentially, nobody's just a company anymore. Everybody is a company and a media company. So it's figuring out exactly, once you've clarified your brand, what content do you need to be creating that's going to help them and speak to them based on where they're at, excuse me, right now, and not necessarily where they aspire to be. You do want to paint a vision for them in terms of where they want to be. But I think something I see a lot of people do is they talk over their client. So let's say, for example, or their potential client, they'll have an idea of exactly what their problem is, because the main reason you want to figure out who your audience is so that you can really clarify what their biggest problem is, because people invest to solve their immediate big problems. And where a lot of people make a mistake is they communicate the messaging to speak to the problems that they think they have without having that data. And what you have to do is demographically break down and even research to pull data from, and learn exactly what your audience's biggest problems are. And through that, find that common thread, find that common link. And once you understand their problem, it makes it a lot easier for you to reverse engineer exactly what content you need to be creating, but also how to tailor and position your skill set to be the most valuable to them. And a lot of people struggle with finding the audience that's going to value their skill the most. I definitely had that issue too when I first started, and that comes down to positioning, brand positioning. So it's taking your skill. Let's say your skill is, I'm just gonna come up with something on the spot. Let's say you're a copywriter, for example. You want to figure out who's going to value my copywriting the most, is who is leaving a lot of money on the table because they don't have good copywriting, who is having a lot of ad campaigns fail because they don't have a good copywriter. It's figuring out who's losing out the most, but also who has the most to gain. And once you can identify that, from there, it makes it a lot easier to figure out exactly how to monetize your skill. So let me take it back now. So once you figure out, all right, I have this skill, I know these people need it the most, and I know I can deliver a lot of value to them. And because you know you can deliver a lot of value to them, it makes it a lot easier for you to value what you're offering, therefore charge your worth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the good things that come along with that. And once you've identified who that audience is, from there, you want to be creating content. You want to be publishing content like this, going on live, going on YouTube, going on Facebook, writing articles, recording videos, and start building brand. And once you've done that, the next step is you want to create a marketing system. So you want to create, some people do it in the form of a guide or a 3-part video series, but essentially you want to create a series of content that, number one, positions you as an authority and expert, and trusted source for your specific category and topic that you're helping people with, and also delivers value. So the whole point of creating this content is essentially you want to take them from point A to point B. So you want to take them from where they are right now to the next step. And this is why it's so important for you to identify exactly who your audience is and what point of the journey they're at, so you can figure out what that point B is for them and where they're at point A. So essentially what you want to do is you want to create as much free content as possible. Essentially, you want to give it all away. You want to give it all away. You don't need to hold back. But what you want to do through that is make sure that you're moving the needle for them. Making sure that you're creating content that's actually designed to get them a result. Because again, it's what you want to do is you want to put people on. You want to show them how good you are by getting them some kind of result without ever really asking for anything. And again, it's taking them from point A to point B so that you can create services, experiences, products that can take them from point B to point Z. Point Z being exactly like the dream destination of where they want to be. So once you can create marketing, and that will happen in the form of the organic free content that you put out, that will happen in the form of these funnels that you can create. A funnel is just another word for a campaign design. It's more of a content campaign designed to drive more leads into your business. So once you have that lead generation down, you can use things like Facebook ads or Instagram ads to drive traffic back to that funnel and campaign so that you can reach people through that. So yeah. Once you have your marketing solidified, then you got to market, or you got to focus and dial in the biggest skill of business. And that skill is how to sell. Unfortunately, if you do not know how to sell, business is gonna be quite tough. And I think we're at a time now, luckily, where you don't really have to sell. What you have to do is deliver value, and you have to build relationships. And that in itself takes the sleaziness and the sliminess and the sticky part about being the quote unquote traditional car salesman that a lot of people don't want to be. Like, for me, I personally don't like selling, but I like building rapport. I like creating connection. I like delivering value, because when I deliver value, I feel valued. And when I feel valued, that feeling is worth more than the sale. Even though I know logically in the back of my head, my business mind kicks in and it says, cool, I still have, I still have to eat. I still have people to feed. But once you can put yourself in that place of focusing your energy on delivering value, it's when you do that, you realize it's not about the person you're specifically delivering value to, it's about the people that they tell. So a simple example for this, what you'll realize when you start to monetize your expertise is, for a fair majority of your clients, they'll actually find out about you from their friends, from their colleagues. They'll actually be referrals. The majority of my business over time was built on referrals, and there's just something so powerful about sort of letting, and it's a hard thing to do, especially at the start. And I want to bring awareness to that. But if you can sort of detach yourself from the sale, it just makes it so much easier to navigate and create an authentic relationship with the person that's going to bring on as a client. Because I like to say that, the people we work with are dream clients, for the most part. And what you need to do is really, and this comes back to selecting your audience, it's figuring out who's my dream client, like who would I actually genuinely love working with, like who would be fun. um and a lot of people, if you haven't had the experience, you'll definitely um build clarity on who that dream client is as you go. Sometimes it's easy to just build that first dream client based on characteristics in terms of, are they more laid back, are they A type, whoever you find naturally in a work setting you get along with, maybe sort of look at their characteristics and pull together this dream client profile that you can attach when it comes to clarifying that audience. So once you have the marketing set up and you have your sales dialed in, essentially, so one tip I'll give you guys on sales is like travel. It's not about selling the ticket, it's about selling the destination. So it's about figuring out exactly where your audience wants to be. It's figuring out what is that point Z for your audience, what is that dream destination, and not selling your service to them, but selling the destination, selling the outcome, selling the result. And once you can implement result driven sales into everything you do, it makes it a lot easier to sell what you're offering. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what you do, it's about the result that it's creating for them. So I hope that makes sense. So once you've I guess one more step I'll add onto this, Sabrina, I don't want to overwhelm you, but once you figure out exactly how to sell, then it's just a matter of setting up the systems to make sure you deliver as much value to them as possible, and building out customer service, just customer service experiences that allow you to stand out and be unique. Because the biggest part of your brand isn't just about the content you're putting out on the front end, it's about the entire world that you create for them on the back end. And how you can do that is through creating community within the back end, and making sure that all your customers are connected with each other in one way, shape, or form. And that can be setting up a simple deep dive weekly Q&A call like this that you do via Zoom, that allows your customers to feel like they're part of something, like they're a part of a community. Another thing you can do is, when people sign up for your services, depending on the ticketed pricing, etc., send them a gift bag, send them a surprise at some duration during that relationship, because surprise is one of the biggest ways to build a relationship with your customer or client. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of time on that question, Sabrina, but I hope that answers it for you. Okay. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. Cool. So Varsha from the UK. What's up, Varsha? Varsha asks whether so Varsha is wondering whether she should build her personal brand off the back of her business, or just keep it separate. But ideally, she'd want them to be one entity. So this is actually a very good question, Varsha. I think a lot of people sort of get stuck whether they should build a corporate brand, or just keep it under their personal brand, and that sort of they find themselves in this back and forth dilemma. I know I definitely have. So let's dive in. Let's dive in. So the first thing you want to identify is the why. So why do you want to separate the two different businesses? Is it because there's other businesses you want to start down the line, therefore you don't want to purely attach your personal brand to that? Or do you just want to separate them just because? Maybe it's for the LinkedIn profile to have a separate company page, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think once you know your why, it makes it much clearer. But something I've done that might help is I've decided to, so before for a long time, my personal brand was also my company, hence starting off as a freelancer and sort of how that went about. And over time, I've slowly created essentially, I've created an entity where, which is the Influence Society, just to separate out and have my personal brand, me, be the spokesperson of that and the face of the company. I think especially for serial entrepreneurs and creatives, I think that's the smartest decision for them, to always create a separate entity, because there's a good chance you're not going to be able to fully commit to something for a decade. I think someone should only make something their personal brand if this is something they want to do for decades on out. And for creatives and serial entrepreneurs specifically, those are the type of personalities that always want to be creating something new. Therefore, I would create separate entities and build your personal brand and build an audience around your personal brand, so that whenever you create something new, the people that you've built along the way also can, invest their time and energy into that as well, depending on what the experience is. Like, for example, I know other things I want to get involved with or over time is I want to get involved with music. I want to get involved with personal development. I want to get involved with, things like biohacking, and that falls under the personal development spectrum. But these are all things that my one audience under my personal brand I'm building now can all connect with in some way, shape, or form. Therefore, I've built the Influence Society, which is my branding agency and academy, as a separate entity, because I know along the way I'm going to be creating these other things, and my personal brand is going to last as long as I do, or if I do my job right, longer than I'm here. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Next, Danae asks, where do I begin for the biggest impact? So I think I need a little bit more context around this question. If you're referring to impact in terms of impacting people's lives, I'll break it down, because I'm assuming it's either impacting people's lives or it's impacting, essentially reaching more people and making a bigger impact that way. So I'll answer the first one. If you're trying to if you're asking where to begin to make the biggest impact on people's lives, it's looking at your skill set, but it's also looking at what's close to your heart in terms of what's a big problem in the world you feel in some way, shape, or form called to contribute to. And it's maybe something you think about, it's maybe something you've read about and you've felt naturally interested and consistently called to, and it upsets you. I think it has to definitely be emotionalized. It's something that, when you read about this thing, it makes you emotional in some way, shape, or form. I think figuring out your impact starts with what's that emotional trigger. So whenever you think about it, whenever you read about it, um, whenever you watch a video on it, it emotionally triggers you, and you have the thought that maybe one day you'll want to contribute to this, or you're constantly thinking about how you can contribute to it. Whatever that thing is for you, that's the biggest way you're going to be able to make an impact. So I'd start there, Danae. If for context reasons, if your question was how do you make the biggest impact online so that you can reach more people, that starts with reverse engineering your story. Like, what's your story? Um, but it's also looking at what's the biggest skill you have that can really transform somebody's life. I think that skill comes in different forms for people. Again, if someone's a personal trainer, they're going to be able to transform somebody's life through fitness, through changing their body, therefore upgrading their level of confidence, and that newfound confidence can change somebody's life. If you're again a copywriter, and somebody has been trying to make their business work for so long, and you come in and you transform their copywriting across all their platforms, and their business blows up, and therefore you impact, their livelihood, their family, their children's education, their children's health care. There's different ways based on your skill set that you can deliver a ton of value to somebody. So it's figuring out what where your curiosity lives, and figuring out how you can package that up in a way that's going to heavily impact somebody. So I hope that answers your question today. Next, let's see. So, Doctor, and this will be the last question here. Dr. Alec, how do I create a cohesive message that is authentic? Got it. So the cohesive messaging that's authentic, the authenticity is usually built on your story and on your personality. So essentially on where you've been, where you are right now, and sort of your self-expression. So let me break that down. Let's start off with self-expression. I feel there's there's just so many people, let's say in the coaching and consulting space, that have similar messages, are doing similar things. Like, I can't tell you how many brand strategists there are out there in the world. I know I'm definitely not the first one, but how I stand out is by expressing myself, by just being me as much as I can in this medium of content creation. And that's the key. That's the key. It's injecting as much of your personality into everything you do as much as possible. That's how you make everything authentic. It's about trying to be the version of you people will meet in person, the version of you are with your friends, the version of you. I just stick it to those two. That's it. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. So, number one, injecting your personality into everything you do. Number two, reverse engineering your story and pulling out the message that encapsulates your story. So a question during my branding consulting process I do with people when we're clarifying it, one big question I love to ask is, if your life was a movie, what would be the underlying message? And through pulling out that underlying message of what your story is and what it represents, sometimes that underlying message for people is resilience, that no matter what challenges come your way, you always have the power to come out on top of it. No matter, sometimes it's like, no matter what challenges come your way, you have the power to sort of reframe it and give it a new meaning. And I'm having a brain fart here, guys, and essentially do whatever you got to do to overcome that. People have different messages based on their experiences and upbringings. So it's figuring out what your upbringing and experiences were, what your biggest triumph moments were, your biggest wins, your biggest losses, and from there, just creating a message around that story that you feel truly encapsulates everything you've been through. And that can only come from you. That's got to come from the heart. And I think overall, with this question of authenticity, it's really about evolving from building your brand from here to building your brand through here. And I think once you do that, this is the only place where authenticity can truly express itself through. So yeah, I hope that helps. We've hit 10 a.m. That was officially the first Brand Talk Live. This was definitely an interesting, fun experience. I'm hoping to work with my main guy Ivan to make sure that we can actually get people live on here asking questions as well and figure out that piece of the technology. But yeah, guys, welcome to the first episode. It's exciting. I feel like this is definitely going to be something that grows in ways I can't really see just yet. But aside from that, this feels good. This is cool. This is fun. And I hope to see you guys next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And if you have any questions, head over, depending on where you're viewing this from, just head over to like Instagram, pull up Corey B. Johnson and just send me a DM, ask me a question. If I don't answer it on the spot, I will 100% answer it on the show. But again, I want as many questions as possible so that when I show up on here, I have something to talk about and I'm not just, So again, guys, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're staying well. Don't forget to wear your mask outside, and I'll see you on Thursday. Take care.